The night the Duke of Greymont arrived, Winter held the grand estate of Vidian Hall in a silent, breathless
I
grip.
implore you, do not turn away from
Frost
me.
feathered the
Your
tall
words are
windows like
persuasive, but can I
intricate
trust them?
lace,
With
and
all my heart.
inside, every chandelier blazed to ward off the season's gloom. Silk and jewels shimmered under the light, but the air thrummed with a desperate, unspoken tension. This was no simple ball, it was an auction of futures disguised as merriment. Among the polished daughters presented like crown jewels stood Alara Vance, a statue of stillness near a column twined with frostbitten ivy. Her gown was the color of wood smoke, elegant but deliberately muted, designed to deflect attention. She was the eldest Vance daughter, though in society's ledgers she was a footnote, a quiet daughter from a first wife long buried and best forgotten. Her father, Lord Theron Vance, moved through the crowd with the strained jollity of a man drowning in debt. He spoke of noble bloodlines and recent misfortunes, his hands gesturing always toward his two younger, glittering daughters by his second wife. They laughed on cue, their beauty a practiced art. Alara watched from her post. She had mastered the art of dissolution, of making her presence a soft echo in a loud room. She felt the old, familiar, hollow ache, not of jealousy, but of erasure. Her crime was her resemblance to her late mother and a mind too thoughtful for the marriage mart. The Duke's entrance severed the room's fragile gaiety. He was a man of stark presence, his face an unreadable monument, his silence more imposing than another's speech. Alara fixed her gaze on the parquet floor, a habit perfected over years. But then she felt it, a pressure, a weight of attention that did not skim, but settled. Against her will, her eyes lifted. He was looking directly at her, not a glance, but a study. The world narrowed to that single, jarring line of sight. Lord Theron, panicking, swooped before the Duke, his voice too loud. "Your Grace, the honor, please consider any of my daughters. Choose whomever you wish." The plea hung in the air. The Duke's gaze lingered on Alara for a heartbeat longer than propriety allowed, a silent fissure in the narrative of the evening. Then he said nothing, not a word, but in that potent silence, something long dormant within Alara shuddered awake. The invisible girl had been seen, and the foundation of her carefully endured life began to crack. As the Duke finally turned away without uttering a word, a single rare winter rose from the centerpiece behind Alara trembled and fell, its petals scattering soundlessly at her feet, an omen no one else noticed. Morning at Vidian Hall did not bring clarity, only a heightened sense of suspense. The Duke's carriage remained in the drive, a dark, monolithic promise of unresolved business. Whispers now trailed Alara in the halls, not of pity, but of sharp speculation. To be noticed without context was a perilous thing. At breakfast, her sisters chirped about the Duke's probable intentions, inventing compliments he had never given. Lord Theron praised them, his eyes deliberately skipping over Alara as if she were an empty chair. He was willing the previous night's anomaly into oblivion. The first tangible proof it was not an illusion came before noon. On the table in the sunroom, a book appeared. It was a volume of botanical sketches from the Southern Isles, its pages worn. Alara had mentioned a fascination with such flora years ago, only to be chided for impracticality. There was no note. The message was in the memory itself. Her breath caught. Someone had listened to a ghost. Her father, upon discovering it, paled. He ordered Alara to keep to her chambers, then countermanded himself, fearing the Duke might interpret her absence as an insult. She was now a pawn in a game she didn't understand, her visibility a weapon for others. She sought refuge in the frost-rimed conservatory. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and forced blooms. She did not hear him approach until his shadow fell across the page of the very book she held. "Miss Vance." His voice was like stone smoothed by a river, deep, quiet. They spoke of the resilience of winter plants, of the engineering of greenhouses. He asked her opinion on the hybridization of roses and listened to her answer as if it were a matter of state. It was a conversation of profound nothingness and immense significance. He stood beside her not as a suitor to a jewel, but as one intellect to another. From a window above, her stepmother watched, her face a mask of cold fury. By dinner, the rumor was no longer that the Duke had looked, it was that he had spoken to her alone. Scandal, once seated, grows swift and wild. Alara returned to her room that night feeling the walls of her world constricting and expanding all at once. The silence had ended, and the storm of consequence had begun. As she prepared for bed, Alara found a single, perfect camellia bud tucked beneath her window sash, a flower that blooms defiantly in winter, and a message that the Duke's attention was not only memory, but intention. The next invitation was direct and private. The Duke requested her presence in the estate's long gallery, a hall of ancestral portraits where the eyes of long-dead Vances seemed to judge them both. When the door closed, the silence was a living thing. He did not offer pretty apologies. "Has my attention caused you difficulty?" he asked, his gaze steady. "Difficulty is familiar, Your Grace," Ilara replied, her voice surprisingly firm. "Uncertainty is the newer burden." He nodded. "Then let me replace uncertainty with clarity." He moved to a portrait of a severe-looking woman. "My grandmother. She was traded for a tract of timberland. She learned to love the man, but she never forgot the transaction." He turned back to Ilara. "I have no interest in replicating that history. I saw you watching that night, not performing, but seeing. I have been a prize to be won my whole life. I recognize the same in you, a person treated as a contingency." His raw honesty dismantled her defenses. She spoke then, not of hurt, but of strategy, how she had learned to be quiet, to be useful, to be a placid backdrop. She called it the art of fading. When she finished, he reached into his coat. He placed not a jewel, but an old iron key on the stone windowsill between them. "It unlocks the gate to the old cliff path. It leads to a place where you cannot be observed by this house." He met her eyes. "A place to be unseen by choice, not by command. A different kind of power." The gift was not romantic, it was revolutionary. It acknowledged her captivity and offered a literal means of escape. A knock at the door signaled the end of their stolen moment. As he left, he paused. "I will act tomorrow night. Be prepared." Ilara clutched the cold key. His confession had not been of love, but of recognition, a meeting of two solitary souls navigating prisons of expectation. The game was no longer about her father's debt or society's rules. The Duke had just changed the rules entirely, and Ilara held the key in more ways than one. Later that night, exploring the silent house, Ilara found the corresponding gate. Beyond it, the moonlit path did not descend toward gardens, but climbed steeply toward the wild, sea-beaten cliffs, a road leading not to escape, but to a precipice. The final ball was a masterpiece of tension. Lord Theron had doubled the flowers and the musicians, as if opulence could dictate the outcome. He hovered near the Duke, a smile etched into his face. Ilara stood apart, the iron key a secret weight in her pocket. She felt the Duke's gaze find her across the room, a touch as solid as a hand.
"For you, my dear."
Her father, voice
Thank
booming
you.
with false confidence, played his final card. "Your Grace, we are so honored. My house is open to you. Please, I beg you, choose any daughter your heart favors." The silence that followed was absolute. The Duke did not look at the giggling sisters. He turned his entire body toward Ilara and began to walk. The crowd parted like a sea. He stopped before her, not extending a hand to lead her away, but placing himself deliberately at her side, facing the room. "Lord Theron," he said, his voice cutting the stillness, "you offer me a choice of ornaments. I have instead found a cornerstone." A collective gasp swept the room. "I do not choose from your presented selection. I choose Ilara Vance. not because she was offered, but because she was hidden. I choose her mind, which you neglected. I choose her silence, which you mistook for emptiness. He was not asking, he was stating a fact, rewriting her value in front of everyone who had dismissed it. He finally turned to her, his public demeanor softening by a degree. Miss Vance, I would seek your permission to court you, openly and with intention. Do I have it? Every eye burned into her. This was her moment, to reclaim the shadow and refuse, or to step into a blinding, dangerous light. She thought of the key, of the cliff path, of a future defined not by fading, but by standing firm. She lifted her chin, her voice clear as crystal in the hushed hall. You have it, Your Grace. It was not a surrender, but a pact. The room erupted in sound, shocked murmurs, stifled outrage, scattered applause. Her father looked shattered, her stepmother's face was pure ice. The Duke's expression remained unreadable, but as he briefly met Ilara's eyes, she saw a flash of fierce satisfaction. The battle was won, but the war for their futures, against the scorn of the world they had just defied, was only beginning. As the Duke led her in the first dance, a messenger in unfamiliar livery arrived at the hall's entrance, demanding immediate audience with the Duke, his face grim, an external threat crashing upon the moment of their fragile victory. In the days that followed, Vidian Hall became a gilded cage of simmering resentment. The promised courtship was a series of formal, chaperoned walks and teas, every word recorded and critiqued. The Duke, whose name was Alistair, was respectful but distant in public, a strategic performance for the watching world. The true connection flourished in stolen, wordless exchanges, a specific book left on a bench, a rare winter berry placed on her windowsill, a sketch of a cliffside flower tucked into her embroidery hoop. They were building a secret language, a testament to the understanding forged in the gallery. Ilara used the key. The cliff path was steep and rugged, ending at a wind-swept promontory overlooking a churning gray sea. It was a place of roaring silence and terrible freedom. One afternoon, she found Alistair there, gazing at the horizon. He was not the imposing Duke, but a man, alone with the elements. "They're saying I made a charitable choice," he said, not turning, "that I pitied you. And they say I trapped you with calculated obscurity," Ilara replied, joining him at the edge. A faint smile touched his lips. "How little they know. I didn't choose you despite your hiddenness, Ilara. I chose you because of it. In a world of shouting, I have spent my life listening for a single true note." He told her then of the messenger on the night of the ball, an old political rival, using the scandal of his rash choice to undermine a vital trade vote in the Lords. "Choosing you was the most politically inconvenient thing I have ever done," he admitted, "and the only truly honest one." Ilara understood. Their union was a rebellion. Her value was his vulnerability. "Then we shall be inconvenient together,"
It is.
she
The
said,
light is perfect.
the wind
Not as
whipping
perfect
her
as your
words
company.
away. He finally looked at her, his guard down. "The courtship is a formality. My intent is fixed. But I need to know, can you bear it? Not the title, but the siege. They will never stop trying to tear you down." She looked from the violent beauty of the sea to the calm certainty in his eyes. She thought of a life of quiet fading in the halls below versus a life of standing here on this precipice with him. The path behind her was gone, eroded by his choice and her acceptance. "I have borne a siege my entire life, Alistair. At least now I have chosen my battlefield, and I am not alone." He took her hand, not as a duke claiming his choice, but as a man anchoring himself to his equal. Below them, the waves crashed against the rocks, relentless and powerful. The world might see a drama of sacrifice and scandal, but on the cliff edge, in the roaring wind, they had found something far simpler and more profound, a pact between two survivors and the first firm ground of a future built not on silence but on a truth finally spoken aloud. As they turned to descend, a figure was silhouetted at the far end of the path, Lord Theron, watching them. But he did not look angry, he looked afraid, and in his hand was not a weapon, but a sealed letter bearing the crest of the Duke's most powerful enemy.